Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone you trusted completely and realized you never really knew them at all? Not the way you thought you did. Not even close. That moment. That specific gut-dropping moment when the floor disappears beneath you and everything you believe turns out to be something else entirely. That's where this story begins. My name is Nora, and the man I'm talking about was my best friend for 15 years before he became my husband. I want you to stay with me, because what I found behind that locked door changed everything. And I mean everything. I need to take you back to when we were 17, and the world still made sense. His name was Callum Reed. Tall, quiet. The kind of boy who didn't need to say much because when he did say something, everyone in the room listened. He sat next to me in junior year English and defended me in front of the whole class the first week of school when Marcus Hale decided I was an easy target. He didn't make a scene. He just looked at Marcus with this calm, steady expression and said, "Leave her alone." 2 words. Marcus left me alone for the rest of high school. That was Callum. That was who I believed he was. My protector. My constant. My person. We drifted after graduation the way people do, different cities, different lives, but he never fully disappeared. A message on my birthday. A call when something big happened. That particular kind of friendship that picks up exactly where it left off no matter how much time passes. I thought that was real. I thought all of it was real. I want you to hold on to that because in about 3 minutes, everything you think you know about Callum Reed is going to change. My father's company collapsed on a Tuesday in October, not slowly. Not with warning signs I could have caught if I'd been paying closer attention. All at once, overnight. The kind of financial collapse that happens when someone has been systematically dismantling the foundation from the inside and you had no idea. My father, too, survived the shock of it. He was gone 4 months later. I was 27 years old. No job, no savings, debt I hadn't known existed. A mother who needed care I couldn't afford. And then Callum appeared, like he always did. He showed up at my father's funeral in a black suit and said 3 words that I replayed for weeks afterward. We got you. He paid off the debt. He set up care for my mother. He offered me a position in his company. He had built something extraordinary in the years we'd been apart. The kind of empire that had his name on buildings in 4 different cities. I was grateful. I was overwhelmed. I was so deep in loss that someone reaching out a hand felt like the only solid thing in the world. 6 months later, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes, because it was Callum, because I trusted him more than anyone alive, because somewhere in the middle of grief and gratitude, something that had always been quiet between us finally had a name, or so I thought. The mansion was extraordinary. I want to be clear about that. It was the kind of home that didn't feel like showing off. It felt like the natural habitat of someone who had never needed to prove anything to anyone. Dark stone and floor-to-ceiling windows and grounds that went on further than I could see from any room. I moved in on a Saturday in March. Callum was attentive in those first weeks, present in a way I hadn't expected from a man who ran the kind of operation he ran. Dinner together every night he was in the city. Coffee waiting for me every morning. Small gestures that felt like fluency in a language only the 2 of us spoke. But there was a door at the end of the east corridor, past the library and the room he used as a secondary office. There was a door I had never seen open. I asked about it once, casually. The way you ask about any room in a house you still learning. He said it was storage. Old files, nothing interesting. I believed him. I believed him for 4 months, until the night he flew to London for a 3-day acquisition meeting, and I couldn't sleep. And I walked the east corridor at 2 in the morning and tried the handle out of pure habit, and the door swung open. He had forgotten to lock it. In 14 years of meticulous, deliberate, calculated behavior, Callum Reed had forgotten to lock one door. Are you ready for what was inside? Because I need you to understand nothing I say next is an exaggeration. Nothing is dramatic license. This is exactly what I found. The room was dark. I used my phone, flashlight, and when the light hit the walls, I stopped breathing. Photos, hundreds of them, floor to ceiling, edge to edge, covering every surface like wallpaper. Photos of me, not recent photos, not wedding photos or pictures from the past year. Photos going back over a decade. Me at 22, leaving my apartment in Boston, a city Callum and I had never lived in at the same time. Me at a coffee shop in Chicago I used to go to every Sunday morning. Me at my father's company Christmas party 5 years before it collapsed. Me at the hospital the night my father was admitted for the first time. There were files, labeled, organized with the kind of precision that made my chest close. Every job I had ever held, every relationship I had ever been in, names, dates, outcomes. There was a folder labeled with a man's name. I recognized someone I had dated briefly at 25, a relationship that had ended abruptly when he stopped calling without explanation. Inside the folder was a single document. It was a financial transfer to him. Dated 2 weeks before he stopped calling, Callum had paid him to leave. I stood in that room for what felt like hours. My legs were shaking. My hands were shaking. My mind was doing that thing where it refuses to process information, because processing it would mean accepting it, and accepting it would mean that everything, every memory, every moment of safety I had ever felt was something else entirely. He had never lost track of me. Not once in 15 years. He hadn't shown up at my father's funeral because he heard about it and wanted to help. He had been watching, waiting, positioning himself for the moment I was most vulnerable, and my father's company. I looked back at the files on the desk. There was a folder there too, with my father's company name on it, and Callum's signature on documents dated 3 years before the collapse. He hadn't just appeared when we lost everything. He had made sure we lost everything. I heard his footsteps before I heard the door. That particular sound, confident, unhurried, the footsteps of a man who has never once in his life had reason to rush, echoing down the corridor toward me. He hadn't gone to London, or he had come back early, or he had never left at all. The door opened. He stood in the frame, still in his travel clothes, looking at me standing in the middle of his secret room with my phone flashlight still on and his files in my shaking hands. He didn't look angry. That was the part that broke something in me. He looked almost relieved. He said, "I was wondering when you'd find this." I said, "How long?" Not a question. I already knew it wasn't a question. He stepped into the room, slow, like we had all the time in the world. Like this was a conversation he had been preparing for and was finally glad to be having. He said, "Since we were 17, I said, "You paid someone to destroy my father's company." He said, "Your father was going to move you to Seattle. There was a job offer. He was going to take it, and you were going to go with him." I couldn't let that happen. The air in the room was very thin. I said, "You destroyed my family to keep me in the same city," he said. "I destroyed the obstacle. You were never in danger. You were always going to be taken care of. I made sure of that." I said, "By you. You made sure I would need you." He looked at me with something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Not the careful warmth I was used to. Something underneath it. Something that had been there the whole time, waiting. He said, "I have loved you since we were 17 years old. Every decision I have made since then has been about making sure nothing and no one could take you away from me. That's not cruelty, Nora. That's devotion." I said, "That's not devotion, Callum. That's a cage." He smiled, just slightly. He said, You've always been safe here. You always will be. He stepped toward me. I stepped back, and I hit the wall of photographs. My whole life, pinned to his wall, organized and labeled and watched. He said quietly, "You can be angry. I expected that. But you, not leaving, we both know that." I looked at him, and I said something I had never said to anyone in exactly that way. I said, "You took everything from me to make me need you. You took my father. You took my choices. You took 15 years. I paused. I said, "Start counting, Callum, because I'm going to take everything back." He went very still. I walked past him, through the door, down the corridor, and for the first time since I had moved into that house, I started looking for the way out, not the front door, something bigger than that. Something that would make sure Callum Reed understood that the one thing he forgot to account for, the one variable in 15 years of perfect calculation, was exactly who I became when someone took everything from me. He should have remembered that from high school. I don't lose quietly. If this story got into you good, it was supposed to. There is a moment in every dark romance where you realize the most dangerous thing isn't the man. It's how much sense he almost makes. What happens next with Nora and Callum is coming. And I promise you, she doesn't run. She doesn't break. What she does is so much more dangerous than either of those things. Click the card on your screen right now. The next story is already waiting. And if you new here, welcome to Hooked Stories. We tell stories for people who feel everything. Hit subscribe. We drop new stories every week. If you think Callum deserves a chance to explain himself, comment Team Callum. If you think Nora should burn it all down, comment burn it down. Let's see where this audience stands. We'll see you in the next one.